In this video, I will demonstrate how to authenticate and query for a document using the Oracle Service Cloud Connect REST API. First, let's review the safe harbor statement as provided by Oracle. In order to query for a document, we need to follow these steps. First, create an API role and an API user. Using Postman, we can then connect to the Oracle site using the API user. We then use the API user token to authenticate a console user and finally query for a document using the console user's credentials. Let's start with a short introduction. The REST API for Oracle Service Cloud Knowledge Advanced allows you to access data stored in the Service Cloud application and allows for integrations to other systems so that you can create and edit knowledge articles, search for knowledge articles, make recommendations, and view user information from external applications. The REST APIs allows you to create your own custom applications. We have two levels of entitlements. One is the API user, which is like a ghost user. The custom application allows the API user to use the Knowledge Advanced REST API services, but only for the role and privileges assigned. Secondly, we have an application user, which can be an account or a contact, who is entitled to access the KA content, again based on the user's role and privileges. Let me explain on the next slide. The API user represents the custom application. The application user represents the custom application. The API user's role lists the REST API services that the custom applications can use. The application user can be a contact or a staff account. If the application user is a contact, the user will then have access. The user's access level grants the user access to the KA articles. Remember, contacts are shadowed in KA as web users, and access levels are shadowed in KA as web roles and user groups. The user groups govern what the KA articles the user can view. If the application user is an account, the user's profile grants the user access to the KA articles and KA privileges. If the application user is an account, the user's profile grants If the application user is an account, the user's profile grants the user access to the KA articles and KA privileges. Remember, accounts are shadowed in Knowledge Advanced as console users, and profiles are shadowed in Knowledge Advanced as console roles. The console role privileges govern what KA actions a user can take. Both the API user and application users must be authenticated by creating an integration user token and a user token. Here is the link for the official API documentation. The most important HTTP methods are listed on this slide. This slide shows some of the troubleshooting and general error messages. For instance, the internal server error provides information on how to resolve the problem by removing a space between the XML and content type tag, which is the FAQ. Now let's demonstrate this. First, let's add the user.
API content user. And don't forget to add the content user role we just created. creating the APIs and accessing the REST APIs. So again, we've got all screenshots creating the API roles, creating the API users, using the API in the management console, and as you can see, all the screenshots are there. So the next step that we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing this and using Postman. And here is the endpoint that we'll be using. So let's start Postman. There we go. And if we go to the first request, as you can see, it's the enable authorization. So the starting point for this is the site, the host site, with that change. If you ever want to find out what the URL is, you go back to the agent desktop, right click, get the properties, you take the first half of the URL, and in our notepad we can paste that into here. So you can see that the API is that. So the only difference to access the content is that the IM will change to IRS. Therefore the whole URL will be exactly this slash. Okay, and the last thing is change the IM to IRS. That is the URL you'll be using in Postman. Okay, there's a few other parameters we need to add, which in the header you'll need to put the site name in and the locale ID, which is US in this case, and also the accept what we're expecting the application to take things. So it'll be in a JSON format. And finally in the body we'll have to put in the users we use. So again here we call this the API content user, and the same here. Now I think everything's in place, so let's do a send, and we get the token back. And it's always worth saving the authentication token because you'll need it later on. API token, which I've saved. The next thing to do is we'll then use the console user to get the data that we want. So let's get a content data. So again, going to the documentation, you'll see it's the authorization, but it's not the. And if we look at the headers, it's application JSON, the content type with JSON, the local ID is that. Now this is the bit we need to change. We need to put in that user token that we just generated. Okay, and we can send that request. And here we have the response. So now we've got the user token here. Let's cut that away. Save it in our notepad. Okay, that. So we've got here, we're looking at document ID f mode equals full. So into the headers now, we have to go and change the token that we saved. So let's get those tokens. First of all, the integration token, and then the content user token. And let's just send that away. And as you can see now, we've got the record. As we scroll down, we can see all the contents of the record now. Here we go, here's FAQ1. That concludes the demo, where we have actually covered the 5 points, which we can go over again. Which is, we created the role, we created the API user, we used Postman to connect, and we used the console user through REST, and finally we queried for a document FA1. Thank you for listening.